Welcome back to the Lines College Football Podcast. I'm Brett Gibbons with TheLines.com, breaking down some Week 7 college football action on Thursday and Friday night. Before we dive into it, don't forget to follow at The Lines US on Twitter, and I am at Road to CFB. I'll be here every single week breaking down the weeknight college football slate. That's Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And check out our weekly college football handicapping tools posted at thelines.com, like a weekly cheat sheet, weather report, upset alerts, and much more. And before we get into it, don't forget to check out our other shows here at The Lines, including The Lines Monster Pod, featuring Stephen Andrus, Matt Brown, and more. But let's get right into this midweek slate. Up first, we have Coastal Carolina on the road at James Madison. JMU is a 9.5-point home favorite, and this over-under is sitting at 60.5 points here at time of recording. This game kicks off Thursday at 7:30 p.m. on ESPN2. Last week, JMU absolutely stunned by Louisiana Monroe as 16.5-point favorites. They lost outright 21-19, but they did outgain the Warhawks by over 100 yards. But their shortcoming here was they were 1 for 5 on fourth down. That's not going to win you very many ball games there. A week after accounting for 7 touchdowns, QB Alonzo Barnett was held in check. Didn't really do a whole lot there. He did rush one in, but no passing touchdowns. Barnett, look, he does a little bit too much sometimes. He's taken 14 sacks this year with almost a 37% pressure to sack ratio. That's the worst in the FBS. Just kind of for a benchmark here, if you're over 20%, it's a legitimate concern. He's at 37% on the season. Again, great playmaker, heck of a ball player, and great season, but sometimes he does a little bit too much and takes sacks that are pretty unnecessary. In my opinion, this is a really fun matchup for multiple reasons, but mostly because James Madison is in the 12th percentile in explosive play rate and 96th percentile in non-explosive EPA, meaning that they're not really giving up a whole lot on defense except for big explosive yards. Just 2 touchdowns scored on them this season have come within 15 yards of the goal line. On the other end, Coastal Carolina, they're in the top 1% in the country in explosive passing rate. 17 30-yard passes on the season. That's second most in the country. So we're looking at a defense that doesn't give up a whole lot except for big plays in a big play-oriented passing offense in Coastal Carolina. Now, between both quarterbacks, I've been really impressed with Barnett. We just talked about it. He adds a bit more of a dynamic rushing threat than Coastal's Ethan Vasco, but both have been really good, like pretty good. If they're your quarterback, you're happy with the way that they've been playing this year. I do think James Madison's going to be able to score on Coastal Carolina. North Carolina is really the only solid data point, in my opinion, that we have on James Madison's defense. Otherwise, they played Charlotte, Gardner-Webb from the FCS, Ball State, ULM. Just not very strong offenses that they played here. But with explosive potential on both sides, I like taking over 60.5 points here. This total was bet up from 58.5 at open. We saw a little bit of resistance when that hit 62.5, but at 60.5 or better, I'm willing to play over on that total. Moving forward, but staying on Thursday night, we have Middle Tennessee on the road at Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech is a 4.5-point home favorite, and this game carries an over-under of 49.5 points. It kicks off Thursday night at 8 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. Look, guys, this is a tough season. Middle Tennessee, they have yet to be even competitive against an FBS team here. But they played Ole Miss, Western Kentucky, Duke, Memphis, a pretty strong cast, especially for Conference USA here. But they have yet to score multiple touchdowns in non-garbage time. They were down 35-7 against Western Kentucky, 38-10 to Duke before they scored late. It's an offense that has not been getting it done. But on the other side, Louisiana Tech, they're not really much better offensively. They're 108th in the nation in points per drive. They're saving grace. They do have a top 40 points per drive defense, but that's against a struggling NC State, Tulsa, and FIU. It's the complete opposite from what we've seen from Louisiana Tech recently. A team that can't score, but leans heavily on their defense there. Middle Tennessee, though, not really much an improvement over the teams that they've played. Actually, it's probably the worst offense that they've played yet this year. Louisiana Tech did make a change at quarterback. Evan Bullock is going to be the starter ahead of Jack Turner here. He completed 70% of his passes, but lower than a 6 average depth of target, 8 out there. No touchdowns last week. Neither option is all that inspiring. Otherwise, we'd probably see them scoring a lot more. On the other end, the Blue Raiders, they've been without their top running back, their workhorse running back, Frank Peasant. He could return this week, though, per report that I saw, which is encouraging. Their other running backs have been banged up as well on the season, so that rushing game has just not been able to get going due to a lot of injuries and overall just a lack of explosiveness. Louisiana Tech's rush defense, it's been pretty good. Again, you got to take into account who they played, but you can't choose your opponents, and they're not playing a much better offense this week here, so they should be able to keep them in check through and through. With or without Peasant, the ball's probably going to be forced into quarterback Nicholas Vadiato's hands. Sorry, tripped over that one. These names kill me, but Nicholas Vadiato's hands, is partly due to bad receivers, but Vadiato he must not throw very friendly ball, very catchable football, because he had 30 drops last year and already has 13 again this year. His receivers just aren't catching the ball, and that is the receiver's fault, but at the same time, you have to throw a catchable football. Some quarterbacks throw a less catchable football than others. I think part of that is on Vadiato. So we're talking about two bad football teams. My numbers that I have that are aggregated power ratings and adjusted for play, I make this closer to +3. So I think I'll take Middle Tennessee +4.5 at this point. It did hit 5.5, and then we saw resistance. So I'm taking it before it gets any closer to 3. And of course, if Frank Peasant returns, that's a big boost for the Blue Raiders. Moving on to Friday night, we have a Big Ten matchup between Northwestern on the road at Maryland. The Terps are 10-point home favorites, and this game carries an over-under of 45.5 points. Kicks off Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Northwestern, they actually return a big piece to their team. Defensive captain, starting defensive lineman Carmine Bastone, he is back after not playing at all this year so far. That's a big boost to the run defense. He's a big presence in the middle. Again, captain, leader. He's a huge boost to get back for the Wildcats. But I'm still concerned about Cam Porter, the workhorse back for Northwestern. He's been hurt. He missed week 5 against Washington, and Northwestern scored 5 total points. And then he was limited to 6 carries in the following game against Indiana. But he was a full participant at practice on Monday, kind of pointing toward, he may be able to come back in a full workload. But if he's even banged up a little bit and they have to pull him, that's tough for Northwestern's offense. The biggest mismatch on this field, though, we're talking about Maryland quarterback Billy Edwards and the receiver Ty Felton against the Northwestern passing defense. Northwestern's defense is 127th in EPA per pass. They've not been able to slow it down by any stretch of the imagination. And Felton, he's outstanding. I mean, just a terrific player. He's got the top wide receiver grade with minimum 25 targets at PFF and 4th in yards per route run. Love that yards per route run metric. It's a very comprehensive look at who is doing the most with every route that they're running. How often are they being targeted and kind of what are they doing with it? And Felton's a top 5 receiver per that metric in the country. Now, a concern that I do have, and this one needs a bit of context, but I do think it is valid. Mike Locksley, man, he is 3-7 straight up coming off a bye at Maryland. And you might say, well, they're probably taking buys ahead of Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, but that really hasn't been the case. They were 14-point favorites last year against Northwestern coming off a bye. They lost that outright. Back in 2019, they were 4-point favorites against UCF off a bye. They lost that outright. They didn't cover as short dogs against Indiana in 20 or as 5-point dogs against Wisconsin in 2022. I don't know what he's doing with those bye weeks, but whatever it is, it hasn't been working up until now because a 3-7 straight up record off a bye is pretty inexcusable, especially with the cast of opponents that they have been playing. Favor twice, short dogs twice. You should expect to win at least a few of those games. I do like Maryland's ability to throw the ball here, though. I mean, I really think that that's the biggest edge on the field. Northwestern's most competitive game, they kind of fell apart at the end versus Indiana. Now, this is the interesting part, and I think where I take my angle on this game. Northwestern's only forced 2 fourth-quarter punts on 12 fourth-quarter drives this year. That's not saying that teams are scoring every time. There's turnover on downs, but forcing just 2 punts in the fourth quarter, and it's like the first drive of the fourth quarter usually for them. At the end of the game, they're just not stopping opposing offenses whatsoever. So I do think that there's going to be a live opportunity that's better than the number that we have right now for Maryland if they get off to a poor start and that number does come down a bit. That's potentially a live halftime bet if you can get it within a touchdown there. I do think Maryland's the better team. If you're forcing a hand at a pre-live play, I would probably take the points with Maryland if I had to go either way here. Our last game that we're going to be talking about here on Friday night, it's our nightcap, 10:30 p.m. on Eastern. We have number 16 Utah, a 6.5-point road favorite at Arizona State. This game carries an over-under of 45.5 points. Big question, does Cam Rising play? No one knows. I don't know that Rising knows. He was cleared medically, and then a game-time decision, and then probable, and then hopeful. It's just, I'm done playing that game with Cam Rising. I'm not going to try to speculate or try to make an angle on a play, whether I think he's going to play or not, because we've dealt with this for 2+ years now. So I'm kind of over that. Isaac Wilson, though, brother of Zach Wilson, of course, he's been just ineffective against power competition. Of course, he's a backup quarterback, but he's just been bad. 2 touchdowns, 4 picks, about 50% completion against Oklahoma State and Arizona. Look, we're just back to last year's Utah team, a team that's going to rely on defense, run the ball, banged up, doesn't score a lot. As long as Rising is sidelined, if he returns and is fully healthy, that's a different story. But on the other side, Arizona State, how about them? 4-1. I think that's one of the bigger surprises on the season here to see that. And their only loss on the year was to a pretty good Texas Tech that's 5-1 in their own right. And their best win on their resume is win at Texas State. Not looking as good as maybe we thought in the moment, but it's still a solid win. They beat Kansas. Kansas have fallen apart. But four of 5 of these games have been 1-score finishes. The lone difference is when they beat the heck out of a very, very bad Wyoming team in week 1. This year, games that Utah plays in, 4-1 to the under. Like I said, like last year's team, not scoring a lot of points. Their defense is very good, so they're not giving up a lot of points. And I think that's going to continue until Rising's back. Utah's defense, though, they play well against the run. They're in the 93rd percentile in stuff rate and top 10 percentile in line yards on defense. And was Arizona State, like to do? They run their offense through Cam Scadaboo. He did just the best player on their team, workhorse. They throw it to him. They give it to him. He's 6th in the nation in carries and has the 2nd most targets on the team already with 20. And they really don't have a second punch. When Scadaboo's not going, that offense kind of lags a little bit. They do get creative. He wasn't able to get it going on the ground against Texas Tech, so he had 117 receiving yards against them. Really what their offense goes as Scadaboo goes. But their offensive line, Arizona State's that is, has just been an issue with pass pro. They're bottom 35 in pressures allowed. So all that said, bad offense in Utah, until Rising gets back and is healthy. Arizona State likes to run the ball against the defense. It's very good defending the run. And kind of as Scadaboo goes, their offense goes. If he doesn't get going, that offense doesn't get going. So I'm taking under 45.5 points here. I think you might be afforded patience if you want to wait to see if Rising's declared in, and even then I'd probably still take under, but you might be punching in a bet right at kickoff there and have to take a live opportunity. So I'm taking under 45.5 points in Utah at Arizona State. But hop on over to our Discord. There you can connect with over 4,000 sports betting fans and get live updates in our college football server. There you can join a sharp and very active community mid-October, never busier than it is right now. And don't forget to subscribe to the Lines for weekly college football odds and betting videos all season long. Subscribe to us on your podcasting app of choice, be it Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever you're using these days, and drop us a good review if you liked what you heard here. But thank you so much as always for watching. I'm Brett Gibbons. We'll see you next time.